When talking about the Arabs before Islam, we deem it necessary to draw a mini picture of the history of rulership, princeship, sectarianism, and the religious domination of the Arabs, so as to facilitate the understanding of emergent circumstances which when Islam appeared. When the son of Islam rose, rulers of Arabia were of two kinds: crowned kings, who were in fact not independent, and heads of tribes and clans, who enjoyed the same authorities and privileges possessed by crown kings, and were mostly independent, though some of those tribes could have shown some kind of submission to a crown king. The crown kings were only those of Yemen, Hira, and Ghassan. Rulership in Yemen. The folks of Sheba were one of the oldest nations of pure Arabs who lived in Yemen. Excavations at Ur brought to light their existence 25 centuries before Christ. Their civilization flourished and their domain spread 11 centuries before Christ. It's possible to divide their ages according to the following estimation. Number one, the centuries before 650 before Christ, during which their kings were called Makrib Sheba. By the way, the word Makrib means the one who rules and unifies a group of nations. Their capital was Sarawa, also known as Khariba, whose ruins lie in a spot a day walks from the western side of Maghreb. During this period, they started building the Dame of Maghreb, which had great importance in the history of Yemen. Sheba was also said to have had so great a domain that they had colonies inside and outside Arabia. Number two, from 650 before Christ until 115 before Christ. During this era, they gave up the name Maghreb and assumed the designation of kings of Sheba. They also made Ma'rib their capital instead of Sarawak. The ruins of Ma'rib lie at a distance of 60 miles east of Sana'a. Number 3. From 115 before Christ until 300 after the birth of Christ. During this period, the tribe of Himyar conquered the kingdom of Sheba and took Ridan for capital instead of Ma'rib. Later on, Ridan was called Zifar. Its ruins still lie on Mudawar mountain near the town of Yarim. During this period, they began to decline and fall. Their trade failed to a very great extent. Firstly, because of the Nabatean or El Ambat in Arabic domain over the north of Hijaz. Secondly, because of the Roman superiority over the naval trade routes after the Roman conquest of Egypt, Syria, and the north of Hijaz. And thirdly, because of the intertribal warfare. Thanks to the three above mentioned factors, families of Qahtan were disunited and scattered out. The fourth point, from 300 after the birth of Christ until Islam dawned on Yemen, this period witnessed a lot of disorder and turmoil. The great many and civil wars rendered the people of Yemen liable to foreign subjection and hence loss of independence. During this era, the Romans conquered Aden and even helped the Abyssinians or Ethiopians now to occupy Yemen for the first time in 340 after the birth of Christ, making use of the constant intertribal conflict of Hamdan and Himyar. The Abyssinian occupation of Yemen lasted until 378 after the birth of Christ, whereafter Yemen regained its independence. Later on, cracks began to show in Ma'rib Dam, which led to the Great Flood in 450 or 451 after the birth of Christ, mentioned in the Noble Quran. This was a great event which caused the fall of the entire Yemeni civilization and the dispersal of the nations living therein. In 523, a Jew called Dhun Nawas was one of the Himyarite kings in ancient Yemen, dispatched a great campaign against the Christians of Najran in order to force them to convert into Judaism. Having refused to do so, they were thrown alive into a big ditch where a great fire had been set. The Quran referred to this event. Allah said, قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ. Cursed were the people of the ditch. This aroused great wrath among the Christians and especially the Roman emperors, who not only instigated the Abyssinians against the Arabs, but also assembled a large fleet which helped the Abyssinian army of 70,000 warriors to effect or to conquer Yemen for the second time in 525 after the birth of Christ, under the leadership of Iriot, who was granted rulership over Yemen, a position he held until he was assassinated by one of his army leaders, Abraha, who, after reconciliation with the king of Abyssinia, took rulership over Yemen and later on deployed his soldiers to demolish Al Kaaba, and hence he and his soldiers came to be known as the men of the elephant. After the elephant incident, the people of Yemen, under the leadership of Mahdi Yakrib ibn Saif Dhu Yazan al-Hamiri, and through Persian assistance, revolted against the Abyssinian invaders, restored independence, and appointed Mahdi Yakrib as their king. However, Mahdi Yakrib was assassinated by an Abyssinian he used to have him around for service and protection. The family of Dhu Yazan was thus deprived from reality forever. Qisra, the Persian king, appointed a Persian ruler over Sana'a and thus made Yemen a Persian colony. Persian rulers maintained rulership of Yemen until Badan, the last of them, embraced Islam in 638 after the birth of Christ. Thus, the Persian domain over Yemen terminated. That's enough for now. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.